Standing by for grateful and loving Coast Guard. We are reading you out and clear.
Hello and welcome to Sea Views. And today we're joined by our captain, Brendan O'Shannessy, who's been with us before. Welcome, Brendan.
Thanks, Julia. Thank you, Adam. Thanks for having me.
Yeah, we're so glad to have you back. And also we're joined by Laura Beard, and Laura's from International Seafarers Welfare and Assistance Network. And hello, Laura.
Good morning, Julia. Good morning, Adam. Thanks very much for inviting me. Very well, thank you.
My co-host Adam from CHIRP. Adam, it's great, isn't it? We've got a great team assembled here to talk about yacht crew welfare.
I'm looking forward to this one, and you've picked the right day to do it. It's a hot sunny day in the UK, so that's why I'm in a short sleeve shirt and so I'm in a good mood. So hopefully we can talk positive things about welfare, and I know actually there's a lot to be done in that sector, so I'm really looking forward to it.
Yeah, great. Well, I suppose a good thing to kick off with would be to just explain what we're talking about when we say the large yacht sector, because maybe all our listeners don't understand what we mean by that. So who wants to kick off with that description?
I'll grab a bit, and Adam might correct me on the way here. So different sources. I actually had a quick look at Solent University for their numbers because they're not trying to sell or talk up anything. So they say there is approximately 5,000 to 5,500 yachts over 24 metres that have professional crew. That number goes up and down 10%, I think, but I think we're in a not bad space. They extend to say the crew there ranges between 140 and 168,000. And I think that's probably not bad. Our diaspora of where and who they are, that's global. Obviously, we have our hubs, Mediterranean, East Coast of USA. The Pacific is getting more crews and yachts. Mm. And the nationalities drawn in are getting broader. And that, I think, gives a picture of just a paint-by-numbers picture. Adam, would you say I'm okay there with my numbers?
Do you know what? I wouldn't disagree with any of those things. And the 24 metres that you mentioned is really interesting because, of course, you and I both know that regulations change for the sub and the greater than 24 metre range. And so sometimes, and it might be that when we continue this conversation, we need to actually, at some points, perhaps raise where some of these regulations and things we might talk about do and don't apply. But in general, like you say, the larger the vessel, the more regulations, the more safety sort of net you've got, the more welfare net there is sitting around you. And if you're below 24 metres, that isn't always the case.
I think that's a really important comment to make. And Laura, you may have some input there from where people respond to yacht crew help. I'll speak firsthand from my exposure, but that is in the larger sector of yachts. And I'll sit next to another captain running a different size market segment, geographical position, and it's quite different.
I think that's a really, really interesting point to raise. And one thing that's really specific to the yachting industry as well, that perhaps doesn't necessarily apply elsewhere in maritime, is the percentage of those boats, the number that Brendan mentioned being a huge number of boats, but it's estimated that as many as 90% of those boats are actually privately run. So they're not registered as commercial vessels, and therefore they don't have the same obligations such as MLC compliance that do have a really direct impact on the crew and on the safety of the crew on board.
Yeah, that's a really important point, actually, Laura, because when we talk as CHIRP, when we talk to flag states, they quite often say they are sometimes restricted in what they can and can't expect of a privately owned yacht against a commercially run yacht. And so it's quite complicated. And I suppose the first takeaway for any of our listeners who may be working on a large yacht is it pays to know what regulations do and don't apply to you, because sometimes expectation management, that doesn't mean that you should accept any lower level of welfare standard than anybody else and be treated like a second-class citizen. That just means that, unfortunately, sometimes the regulations and the protections may not apply to you.
But we're talking about a lot of people working on these super yachts. I think sometimes if you're not working in the industry, you might look at these amazing yachts when you're somewhere on holiday and you think about the billionaires and the millionaires. but you don't think about the hundreds and thousands of people that are running it all, and that's a whole big industry, and it is growing, I think, isn't it? And there's certain parts of the world where it's really growing as well. So we're talking about actually a lot of people, aren't we, working at sea in this role?
Julie, I'm going to pull your thread there a little bit. I've stepped out of yachting before and gone back to commercial shipping as a marine pilot. And my observation there is when you talk about, if you do think of the people on board, if you look past the shiny, great big white shiny story on your chosen platform, and you think, wow, it must be just the luckiest job in the world. When mariners in commercial shipping go away on a bulk carrier, all their network understands that's hard work every day. There is some empathy, there is some sympathy. They may come from a seafaring culture, and everyone knows you're going off for your 5 or 11 month swing. It's hard. Every time we pick up the phone, there's some empathy. And those that go to yachting, quite often, everyone just looks with envy and just thinks it's the best job in the world. So to gain this support isn't there. And that really came home to me when I was boarding bulk carriers every day to bring them into port. I had a deep empathy. How many days at sea, Captain? 50. Oof. How many days sitting in the anchorage? 30. Wow. How's the food stock? I've got this huge empathy. When a pilot comes on a yacht, they just look around and go, lucky to be here, aren't you?
Yes. Perceptions can be different to reality, because there's the hard work and the time away from home, just the same in similar ways. I think maybe that's the time to move on to what are we talking about in terms of the support for yacht crew? And I'm interested to sort of delve into what the kind of issues are for them. What are some of the barriers? What are some of the problems that people are coming to you about? Laura, do you want to kick off with that?
Absolutely. So perhaps I can begin by explaining a little bit about what we do at ICE One and who we are. So, Julie, as you mentioned kindly in the introduction, ICE One stands for the International Seafarers Welfare and Assistance Network. And we're a charity based in the UK, based in London, although we have offices and staff all over the world. And we offer a number of core welfare support services for crew and for seafarers, and also for their families worldwide. And two of our core services that we offer are helplines, one of which is called Seafarer Help and the other is called Yacht Crew Help. So these are helplines which are aimed at active seafarers and crew all over the world, as well as their families, who may be in a situation of crisis or may simply just need somebody to talk to at the end of a hard day. But it's really interesting, picking up on Brendan's point earlier on, and which you illustrated very nicely, Julia, about the difference between the yachting industry and the rest of the maritime world. This is something that was identified at ICE One quite a few years ago. And a piece of research was carried out because it was noticed that Seafarer Help, which was the helpline which existed at the time, was not really being utilised by yacht crew. And a piece of research was carried out to try and understand exactly why. And that research, one of the points that came out of that research was to highlight that many yacht crew actually don't identify themselves as seafarers. They identify themselves as yacht crew. And so a helpline called Seafarer Help, they just simply didn't think that it was for them. And also that piece of research really did highlight that, first of all, the demographic of yacht crew is quite different to elsewhere in the maritime world. And second of all, that the issues that were being reported by yacht crew were quite distinct to those coming out, for example, from bulk carriers, using the example that Brendan mentioned earlier on. And so from that was born the idea to create Yacht Crew Help, which is a helpline dedicated for yacht crew. It runs 365 days a year, 24 hours a day. And it's a completely confidential, multilingual helpline that crew can call, crew of any rank. You might be setting out and looking for your first job in yachting, or you might be a seasoned captain or senior member of the crew. You can contact Yacht Crew Help to talk to us about any issue, be it big or small. There's no judgment on Yacht Crew Help, and we are there 24 hours a day for you.
Yeah. Thank you, Laura. It's really good to make that distinction, I think, because there are different perceptions, and clearly some of the yacht crew themselves feel maybe they aren't identifying perhaps and taking advantage of some of these services that they might need. And Adam and I talk a lot about this theme of welfare and mental health for crew across all of the maritime sector, and how it links to safety. And I'd love to delve into what are some of the I know it's confidential, but the types of problems and barriers and issues that people are coming to talk about.
Yeah, absolutely. So one of the things that we do at Ice One, so my role within Ice One is the Welfare of Yacht Crew Project Manager. So the Welfare of Yacht Crew project, what we do is we listen to yacht crew. We also use insights and data that come from Yacht Crew Help, from the helpline. So once again, the helpline is 100% confidential. But what we do is we do look at the kinds of issues that are being reported to the helpline, and we identify trends within that data. And then we take those trends and we use them to develop campaigns, resources, initiatives to address those issues at cause. So that, we're essentially our own worst enemy. We're trying to sort of reduce the number of calls to Yacht Crew Help by addressing those issues before they reach a crisis point. So yeah, we do identify trends in the data, and it's a really interesting information to kind of pick apart, because generally what we tend to see is that the issues that are reported to us require a really holistic approach, because whilst we might get somebody contacting Yacht Crew Help to report a safety issue related to fatigue, hours of rest, stress, something like that, when we start to actually speak to the seafarer, to the crew member, and understand what's behind that issue, it tends to turn out that it's actually related to a conflict on board or an issue at home, or perhaps there's a combination of factors that is causing that crew member to experience symptoms of stress. So what we're working on at Ice One at the moment is actually a new way of analysing our data to go into even more detail than we already have, to look at those different causes and to try and identify trends and to find ways to address them.
That's super helpful. And actually, if I may jump in here, and I can say this because it's all open source, what strikes me is the number of Facebook pages there are dedicated. I won't name any individual ones because I'm not endorsing any necessarily, but you can see the angst on Facebook on these yachting sort of crew help type pages where people are going on there and saying, this has happened to me, and can anybody help me? And so there's a real call out there for the services that Ice One offers. And I so often want to jump onto all these pages and say, but there is help out there for you. You just, it's sat there. And I think one of the biggest issues is possibly awareness. I say that as CHIRP, who struggle with the same issue. And I suppose if anybody who's listening to this podcast knows anybody in the large yacht industry, do make them aware of Ice One, because actually, it is can be a source of great comfort and support for people who are suffering real issues.
Yeah, absolutely, Adam. Thanks very much for raising that. We are seeing that there is a growing awareness, I think, of Ice One and of Yacht Crew Help out there through all sorts of initiatives. But we are very much aware that there are a lot of yacht crew who haven't necessarily heard of us. And so we are planning later on in the year a structured awareness campaign to try and get those Yacht Crew Help contact details out to as many crew as possible in all locations all across the world. So if anyone is interested in helping us to spread that message, because it's such an important message, then please do get in touch. I think Julie is going to share in the podcast notes our contact details, the Ice One website as well.
One of the things that I remember, Brendan, the last time you and I spoke on our podcast, you made a really key point, which actually I hadn't really considered. And I think perhaps many people do forget, actually, the issues that we're talking about today aren't just about junior crew necessarily. Sometimes it's the person at the top. And I think you said it, that, being in command can be a really lonely place to be. And so I suppose it'd be useful for us to make the point and reinforce that this help is out there for all levels. But Brendan, do you want to sort of talk a little bit more about those types of stresses?
Oh, absolutely. Thanks, Adam. And just before we came on air, Jill and I were speaking of this specifically. It is too easy to identify the most vulnerable as that new entrant crew member that just comes in, has just left home. They are vulnerable, and I'm not talking that down. So are those, and you're a force multiplier if you're a leader on board. If you're in a bad place, that's going to cascade through. So it's really important that the senior, it isn't a problem just for the junior crew that are new starters. You can understood that you will have problems too as a leader. I'm rejoining tomorrow. I'm flying back to the yacht tomorrow, and I've had both daughters just finish their school. And again, Julia and I spoke. There's a lot going on in our family. I'm going to take a bit of that with me back to the workplace. And I need to be able to process all of that in parallel. So no one is immune, because, not to be an outlier, mental health is health. It's just the same. And you carry that into the workplace. And Adam, as CHIRP looks to so strongly, everyone says 80% of incidents caused by human factors. It's a good enough statistic to go with. Let's stay with it. If you are not in a great place, then you're sitting smack in the middle of that 80%, be it the person doing the role. So it goes straight to safety as well. And if you are the leader on board and you're not there absolutely in your best condition, then you can potentially go into a very dangerous environment. Which links very nicely is, not to be contrarian, mental health in yachting is actually an opportunity, not a problem. The more psychological safety, we're about delivering high performance teams and high performance outcomes. If we can develop a psychologically safe yachting community, our performance is going to go up. And that's that if we frame it very positively, we're going to have psychological safety. What does that mean? We have a temptation in yachting at all levels that I got my hair cut to go back to work. We have to conform. We have to be this cookie cutter. We need to give enough space for people to be who they are in the workplace and be respected for that. That's really important.
That productivity thing is an opportunity, isn't it? If you've got a happy and healthy crew, mentally, physically, and working as a team, it's going to make a difference. And I think also what you say, Brendan, is obviously Adam and I look at the issues with crew on other types of ships. And obviously we know there's this key link to safety. But what you're saying about productivity in the yacht crew sector here is that's going to be noticeable. Yes. If you've got a happy, productive crew who are working well together, and that's actually going to be noticeable, isn't it? Whereas it isn't noticeable so much on a tanker in the middle of the ocean. But, you know, that's what people want, isn't it? Charterers
absolutely.
want.
It's a KPI of the industry. It's what we're selling to the world, that we're delivering on this sparkle. And if that is really forced or is not apparent, then we're missing a KPI. We're also letting the individuals down. The other one, which, back to our beautiful bulk carriers, bless them all, they have not changed that much in the last couple of decades. Yes, compliance has changed. The super yacht industry, the capabilities and expectations of a new yachts, it's somewhat banal. Do yacht owners have higher expectations than they did 20 years ago? We all have higher expectations. Get in a new car versus a 20-year-old car. We all know this. So our designers and our builders and our installers have built these incredible platforms, yet we're operating them the way we did 20 years ago. We haven't changed a lot. There are some brand leaders out there, some industry-leading yachts that are really pushing the edge of how to do it better. But all of us, we're manning it the same, we're training the same. We're not actually looking at the humans going, okay, this boat is so much more capable. What are we doing as the humans to actually reach that capacity? That's really interesting.
That is a fascinating point, actually, Brandon. And, you know, I've literally just signed off on a piece of work we've done in CHIRP, we went through the last 5 years. We looked through over a 5-year span. We analysed over 750 reports from all sectors of the maritime industry, not just the bulk carriers that you're talking about, tankers, container vessels, recreational, the whole thing. And we also, what we did is we looked at what were the common factors that occurred across the totality of those reports, and then we went, let's break that down by sector specifically. What are the factors that cause incidents on super yachts? What are they the ones that cause on tankers, containers? And what really stuck out to me so starkly was that when you start getting to the organizational level, so that's the sort of systemic rather than the individual, the factors that cause issues are identical. They are literally identical. And I'm using a taxonomy of 142 different ways to cut that incident cake. And I'm picking up the same 3 things on. So actually, and that's not to belie the fact that super yachts are unique and large yachts are unique. It's not. It's to say that actually the stresses that they face, the issues that they have are identical. And it comes down to design, it comes down to resources, it comes down to processes and procedures. Now, those processes, procedures and designs will be clearly completely different to that bulk carrier you've just discussed. Their operating patterns, the tempo, the raison d'etre, everything is completely different. And yet when it comes to the human, the person that's on board and their mental health, they're under exactly the same stresses, strains, and quite often more so, because there are fewer people in the main who are multi-rolled. A lot of the crew are multi-role people. You don't get the guy that's just, no, I'm just the engineer. That's all I do. They've got 4 or 5 different roles. And the point you made about the changes is really striking. We are seeing report after report where vessels are being built to conform to a certain aesthetic, not conform to necessarily regulations. Whereas a bulk carrier, nobody cares if it looks ugly. Nobody cares if the pilot's ladder, is as long as the pilot boarding station is functional. And sometimes I think the yachting industry can succumb to this issue where, as you said, it's about that sparkle. And sometimes that sparkle can supersede even safety and certainly welfare. And we've got to be careful about that.
Yeah, there's so much to unpick here. And there are a few points that I would like to jump on, actually, if I may. One of the things that struck me, Adam, as you were speaking just then quite rightly, is that the yachting industry is actually, when we look at it, incredibly diverse. We were talking earlier about the number of vessels that are classed as yachts, but that can go from a 24-meter yacht that may have 2 or 3 crew on board, right up to a 140 meter plus that may have, nearly 100 crew on the payroll. So it's one of the challenges we really experience at Ice One is that there is no one size fits all answer where we say, look, here's the thing that's going to magically fix this issue across all yachts. So fortunately, unfortunately, it makes it a very challenging space to work in, but it also makes it a wonderful space for crew with some amazing opportunities. And you can come in onto a small sailing boat or a racing yacht or one of these large yachts. It creates a lot of opportunities for career growth and so on and so forth. But as you were rightly highlighting earlier on, we do have this additional pressure in yachting of this need to deliver a constant 6-star service where there's a pressure on the crew not only to provide that service and to perform perfectly, but also to look spotless and perfect all the time. That, as you mentioned, Brendan, getting your hair cut and going back on board and conforming definitely adds an extra pressure on top of the crew's shoulders. And returning to your point, Brendan, about senior crew as well, I worked on board before I joined ICE when I was working. And so I was in a fairly senior role as well. And being a senior crew on a yacht is an incredibly stressful position to have. You are required to wear an enormous number of hats. You are also quite often responsible for a whole team of crew. You're leading from the front. You're also supporting those crew through their welfare issues. Who are they going to turn to when they have a problem? When it's going to be their head of department, their captain. So these things all build up. And what's really interesting to see is the contacts that we receive from senior crew and from captains at Ice One and at Yacht Crew Help. And it's something been looking at recently because we have seen that we do get frequent contacts from captains, from heads of department, but very often those contacts to Yacht Crew Help from those kind of positions are actually asking for help and guidance in how to support somebody else. So quite often it will be, for example, a crew member who's going through a grief experience. So they've lost a family member whilst they've been working on board. Their head of department is then contacting Yacht Crew Help to say, how can I support this crew member? Now that's great. That's brilliant. And that's definitely something we want to encourage, because that's a wonderful thing to want to do for your colleagues and for your crewmates. But I would also like to stress that Yacht Crew Help is also there for captains and for senior crew, and that it is important to check in with yourself and ask yourself if you're doing okay. And if you're not, then it is important to reach out and just know that those services are there should you wish to take advantage of them.
No, I think that's a fabulous point, Lara. Now our consistent theme on this call has been, it's not just for the immediately identifiable vulnerable person that you might think is the new entrant. Sometimes it's those that have been in yachting a long time, are questioning whether it is still their place. And those people need to feel relaxed that they too should seek support when it's needed. Absolutely.
I think it's a great service that the Yacht Crew Help is available for everybody, you know, whatever your role is. And it's really interesting also in that industry, because you've got a lot of people, I'm thinking, who are coming in perhaps from hospitality, who've never worked at sea. So all of a sudden they've come from what I would imagine was probably quite a sociable, kind of fun kind of job for a young person. But then when you come to go to sea, it's a little bit different, isn't it? That environment's different. So they've got those added kind of environment stresses, if you like, coming into it. And so you've got a whole lot of different individuals, all with perhaps different challenges. So it's great that it can be for, you know, for whatever level you are, however long you've been in the industry, and that people shouldn't feel, oh, like, for example, Brendan shouldn't, at your level, shouldn't think, well, I know everything and I don't need any help, because we've talked about that before, haven't we, Brendan, in the previous podcast we did. You know, that attitude doesn't help, does it? It doesn't help. You've got to be open to get support if you need it.
I'm going to draw upon an Australian campaign because it's just so simple and so nice. They have an "Are You Okay" campaign just to normalise that conversation, and it has to be junior to senior, senior to junior, peer to peer, with just quietly, "Are you okay? I've noticed a few small changes." I was doing an adventure race with a friend who was an ex-regimental sergeant major, and I was doing my bit to mock him about doing the parades that they do each day. I said, "So you spent a career looking at shoes and belt buckles, have you?" And then he pretty instructively broke me down and said, "I look at shoes and belt buckles to see what's going on with the human behind the shoe and the belt buckle. So if someone has their shoes polished every day for 6 months, and then next day it's not quite on point, maybe for a male they're unshaven. That's actually the reason the Army look at shoes and belt buckles, to see those micro changes." And I was schooled quite nicely on a trail by that friend. And it's something I've taken with me on board, that I need to look at the metaphorical shoes and belt buckles of me and my team to see those little changes, because they're the ones that you want to catch 3 weeks before they ever feel the need to ring Yacht Crew Help.
Yeah.
3 months before, maybe.
Yeah. Because people don't always come out and say what they're feeling, do they? So you need other clues.
Absolutely.
Now, do you think, looking ahead, if we're looking at, we want to raise awareness that this service is here, and I think, Brendan, you've just done an amazing bike ride, haven't you, which has helped to raise not just money but awareness for this. So absolutely well done.
Oh, thanks. It's really on point for what we're talking about today. One of the points of it was to go with a captain and chief engineer, two friends, but you're going to see each other in adversity on these, in fatigue. We both had some good crashes, and you're going to see how you react. That is the workplace, just in a box. when everything is going well, you're all great. You're all good friends. When it starts to come back, you get to learn some truths about each other. Wonder what my fitness has done in the last 11 years. Am I still going to be able to finish it? They're the little voices going through, which is the same voices that are going on in the workplace on board. Am I still on my game here? Oh, gee, these guys just coming out of college are really sharp. And am I still on my game? So the parallels were just there. And so we did raise some funds, but more than that, as you said, through a great network, we got a lot of people seeing Yacht Crew Help, and just getting that embedded in there, opportunity for better performance. It's not because you just want to call out problems. That's not the case. We just wanted to do something that got a lot of people, I wonder what they've done today. Oh, he's writing about Yacht Crew Help again. Okay. Where's the photo? But they've seen it.
Yes.
And that was our point.
You got conversations going, definitely, as well as we loved your posts and seeing your progress and crashes and everything. Like the Formula One.
Lara, when I was riding Transalp, it went for 7 days. And there was a point where I thought, let's juxtapose what happens at Yacht Crew Help in a 7-day period. What were those numbers again?
Yeah, so this is really interesting, and it is something that really does speak volumes. So during those 7 days, we went back and had a little look at the contacts to Yacht Crew Help, and we actually received 20 contacts within that time. So 60% of those contacts were completely new. So somebody that hadn't contacted Yacht Crew Help before or was calling to talk about a new issue. And then the remaining 40% were follow-up contacts related to an ongoing and potentially complex issue as well. So that's 20 individuals that we spoke to on Yacht Crew Help during that week.
So looking ahead, though, to the future, what I always ask our guests if there's something you could change that would make a difference to safety. And I'm gonna ask Laura first. Laura, do you have anything you could change, you wish you could change for safety?
Yeah, absolutely. I think that this, at the risk of sounding like I'm repeating myself, really, the most important thing for me is that on board and ashore, we should be creating environments where crew and anyone working with and around the crew feel that they can express a concern, a question, a query. They feel that they can express it without judgment, without the risk of being made fun of. Ideally, on board every single yacht, that environment would exist where there's no silly questions, and that the most junior or the most senior yacht crew feel that they can put their hand up and say, actually, I was just wondering about this before we start, or can we just take a break and talk about this that I've noticed? So that would be the most important message for me. And that's something that we can all work on at all levels of the industry, making sure that the tools are there, that the environment is there, that the doors are open to start those conversations.
Yeah. Brilliant. Well, Brendan, you've had a bit of extra time to think now. What change would you like to see happen?
It was such a simple question. I endorse everything Lara just said as psychological safety, where people can be true and not judged. What I would love to see is that we make that time available. We make the time available. I said in one of the posts, mental health awareness, mental health training is the same as health awareness and health training. We do medical drills. It is a safety item like a life raft. And the other one for safety is acknowledge each individual's performance cycles. I think sporting metaphors are great because they're about high performance, and sports teams, that Olympic runner does not run that time every day of the week. They have training and performance cycles. The yacht that I'm employed on at the moment, we had a few, very rarely, but we had a few weeks. And I caught the narrative. It wasn't downtime. It was actually uptime to repair ourselves, our vessel, get ourselves strong, and get charter fit for the summer. And then we'll all come down a little bit in fatigue, and then we'll have uptime. But start to get that narrative where we respect you as an individual, you as a team will have performance cycles, and we'll try and lead and manage through those. And having someone the confidence and comfort to say, I'm a bit down at the moment. You're going to have to watch me. Please watch me. I'm a bit down. I do it as a leader on board. I'll say to the deck officers, guys, I'm a bit fatigued. I've got a bit going on with the office. Can you just keep an eye on me today? I couldn't have done that in my early captaincies. I can do it now with ease. My confidence wasn't there. I can do it with ease now. I say, hey, I've got confidence, humility. I can do the job, but I can't do it without you. I need to look after me today because I'm a little bit, my thoughts aren't in the space where they need to be. And now I'd love everyone to be able to do that.
That's a really powerful message. That's a really powerful message.
It is.
Yeah.
And I do hope that we raise a bit more awareness of this issue and the support that's out there and everything that you guys are all doing for the industry as a whole and for safety and welfare. So hopefully we'll get a few more people aware of this from this podcast. Okay, well, thank you so much, Laura, and thank you so much, Brendan. Adam and I are going to ring the bell and we're going to leave the bridge now. Thank you very much.
Thank you,
Thanks,
Julia.
Julia.
Thank
Thanks,
you,
Adam.
Adam.
Yeah, no, thanks so much, guys.
Fishing vessel Grateful and Aberdeen Coast Guard, we are reading you out and